Hey, what's going on, everybody? Justin here, and in this video, I just want to share a couple of books that I got that I've read so far this year that are kind of dealing with tough and contemporary societal issues and that sort of thing. It's something I've kind of been wanting to do since returning to book 2, was branching out, reading some stuff that I either have not read before or read in the past, but not so much anymore. So I've been reading a lot more philosophy recently. These kinds of kind of more hard-hitting modern journalism on just contemporary problems and issues and that sort of thing. As well as maybe even some classic fiction coming up in the works. So stay tuned for that if that's your sort of thing. But yeah, let's just go ahead and get started. So the first one we have here is Barron's Money, Power, and the Corruption of America's Food Industry by Austin Frerick. And this is one I read, I think, right before I started doing videos again. But it's definitely going to be one I'm going to kind of data mine and go through and get some facts and numbers and data from. I have a new Luke Term journal. I've been doing a lot more book journaling, especially for philosophy stuff. But this is going to be my gloom and doom one, no joke. I actually haven't started it yet. The last book I'm going to mention here is actually going to be the first entry in that one. This might be the second one. But what this book is all about is how pretty much the entire food sector of the United States economy has become oligopolized. So it might not be a monopoly per se in the technical sense, but almost every sector, there's only a handful of companies that own 80 to 90% of the market share in those sectors. Let's see, for the chapters, I know there's one on grains, there's some on pork farming, cattle raising, let's see, berries, coffee, dairy, and grocers. So yeah, it's pretty crazy when you really read a lot of the stats, and how we have sort of the illusion of choice. Just for example, with meats and stuff, you might see if you get to go to a bigger kind of fresh marketplace and stuff, there might be 20 or 30 different local brands or little brands kind of displayed on there, but they're all owned by 3 companies. So you kind of only have the illusion of choice and that sort of thing. But yeah, this is pretty much all your worst fears of industrial, big agriculture and factory farming, especially. You're gonna read about it. I will say, for those, for animal rights and that sort of thing, the scary part of this book is, even though obviously factory farming really is just totally messed up as far as animals go and that sort of thing, that's only one of the little minor digressions in this book, which shows you how kind of concerning and just crazy some of the things that are kind of going on behind the scenes and whatnot. For example, with the butcher barons, the slaughter barons of cattle raising and stuff, essentially most of them actually break the law just numerous times, over and over and over again, and everyone knows it, and they get caught pretty much every single time. But it's essentially, at this point, it's just a fee they pay to kind of break the rules. So they make a lot more money kind of at the bottom line, after paying the fees and everything like that. But yeah, you just learn how just broken the whole kind of food sector is and that sort of thing. So just, yeah, like I said, really concerning when the animal abuse and everything like that is this one of the smaller factors in this book. But it's just really well done. The author started it because in his home state of Iowa, there's a lot of pork farming, hog raising and that sort of thing, but it's polluting the waters substantially. I can't remember the exact stat, which I need to go through it and put it in my journal and stuff. But I think it was around 50% or more of Iowa's fresh water is basically unusable. You can't even go boating a lot of the time because the water is just unfit for human not just consumption, but just touch and stuff, because of all the the runoff from these giant hog factories and stuff like that. But yeah, probably if you're really squeamish, maybe avoid this one a little bit. But I think it's something, if you ever go buy groceries in a supermarket, you probably should read it. Next up, and I should say, all of these, except for the last one, are books that have been sent to me by different publishers. So thank you to Island Press, Crown Publishing, and Polity for one of them. So anyways, now that that's out of the way, next up we got Means of Control, How the Hidden Alliance of Tech and Government is Creating a New American Surveillance State by Byron Tao. And yeah, this is this is Big Brother, maybe not in a nutshell. It's actually a pretty dense book. But you know how we all joke about, you know, the ads follow us around and they're kind of like always listening with the microphones maybe, and this, that, and the other thing. And, you know, that's why you get commercials and ads on things that you've thought about or talked about or whatever. So pretty much all those kind of memes and rumors and all that stuff, pretty much all of it's true. But there's so much, like, there's so much we don't even know that we don't know. That's pretty crazy. So it was definitely enlightening, very concerning. I guess one of the really concerning components here is there's really not actually a ton at this point that we can actually do about it. But it does just show how, like, money is, like, the bottom line in so many things. Like, all these different tech startups, all these different apps and stuff that originally started with, like, kind of a good idea or kind of like a noble purpose or just something fun or whatever. They all realize, you know, they can just make so much more money by selling the information of the users like tenfold or whatever it was. So it's just kind of crazy how many companies just like aggregate and buy and sell everyone's information, like, you know, at the second level, just like every second. Like, there's a zillion transactions on people's data and stuff like that. So and you definitely deal with kind of like the government. Well, I guess the government lack of oversight for a while there, and then kind of the government kind of starting to get in control of it a little bit, and how it sort of permeated from like all the way down from, like, you had like kind of the well, actually it's kind of funny learning about how like far behind the military was in some of this kind of stuff, and how they thought it didn't realize how useful it, you know, for their purposes it could be and that sort of thing. But how it's kind of trickled down from, like, you know, the national federal level down to state levels, down to like little municipal like police departments and stuff. It's just really concerning, and just, yeah, I feel like everyone should like read it and just get annoyed like I did. Next up is a book I wanted to read because it's vaguely, like, tangentially related to the field I'm in of social work. But it's The Unclaimed: Abandonment and Hope in the City of Angels by Pamela Prickett and Stephen Timmermans. And this is, I mentioned this one actually quite a bit in some other videos, but this is all about what happens to people's bodies after they pass, and no relative or anyone there is able to claim them or is willing to claim them as their kin. You know, what actually happens to the body. So it was really, obviously it's a pretty depressing theme, I guess. The authors definitely deal with it with quite a bit of care, very delicately, but still like present the facts and that sort of stuff. But we follow 4 different people kind of learning about their life stories and kind of what led them to end up in this sort of situation. And you learn all about like kind of the detectives, the coroner's office, the different social workers involved, and the different like kind of municipal and state like kind of agencies that have to sort of deal with this issue. But it was also interesting learning about what factors sort of actually go in to these situations happening, and how it was kind of enlightening on how monetary reasons or fiscal reasons is sometimes a reason, but it's actually very low kind of on like the ranking of what causes people to not claim someone else. But also kind of showing how a lot of the laws really need to be changed in a lot of ways. Just because, for example, in some situations there were like friends or like church family that were willing to, offer up and take care of a deceased person, but legally they were like unallowed to do so. And so they kind of were like in the bodies, like stay in limbo for like up to a year and that sort of thing. So it's just kind of crazy just seeing kind of like the breakdown of a lot of different like kind of both just kind of cultural societal problems where people are just isolated a lot more often in old age, as well as kind of government bureaucratic problems that kind of just jam the system up, and how both those kind of go together and like just the it's not something I've ever actually encountered in my line of work, but I assumed it must happen, but like, you know, just not very often per se. But just the stats from like LA County alone it was just crazy. So I can only just like imagine kind of scaled up to the nationwide level. So like I said, it was very enlightening. The authors handle it very, very beautifully done. and I feel like I did learn quite a bit. Very, maybe enjoyable is probably not the right word, but enlightening, I guess I would say for that. Let's see. Next up is the most recent one I've read, and I still haven't. I don't even know what to make of it. Sometimes I've only had about a week to kind of process it, and it's The Quiet Damage, QAnon and the Destruction of the American Family by Jessalyn Cook. And as it says on the tin here, it's all about the rise of QAnon and what happened, like what actually happens to people that have fallen like hook, line, and sinker into like some of these kind of almost in the broader sense of like conspiracy theories, and kind of cultish behavior and stuff. But obviously, all about like QAnon, but how families really do get torn apart, and just let's see. I want to say this one had 5 or 6 families, sort of profiled with lots of different people. Whether it's I think they had a few moms, some sisters, a husband, a bunch of different people kind of getting sucked into kind of the whole QAnon movement, and how it sort of took over their life, where they would spend literally multiple hours per day just trying to like interpret like the Q drops and all that kind of stuff. But how they became more hostile to pretty much anything not associated with that worldview. Family members kind of disowning like their children, obviously like different breakups, stuff like that. So it is definitely very heartbreaking. It did show what I did like is it did show how some people were able to sort of kind of recover their like original mindset and get out of that sort of system, I guess, that kind of cult mentality, and kind of like the aftermath of how they kind of processed and tried to like recover and like pick up the pieces like from what happened. But yeah, like just really concerning. It's kind of partly why like this whole kind of conspiracy theory type of stuff, why I'm kind of doing the whole like science reading challenge that I recently started, which is Science-Based Readathon. I'll leave a link to that down below if you want to join in and stuff. But just kind of the scientific illiteracy and media illiteracy that the population just generally seems to have in this day and age does concern me. I kind of knew about QAnon and how culty it was, just kind of tangentially, but I didn't realize just how many people and how many different kinds of people. The one common factor did seem to be people that were kind of in a dark place, or had recent kind of like kind of traumatic events and stuff, are definitely a lot more susceptible to that kind of sort of thing. And the book talks about that a little bit. But yeah, if it's something, I guess if you're like more politically minded and just kind of that sort of thing, I would definitely check this one out. Or if you're interested in conspiracy theories or kind of cults and stuff, I think that one would fit quite well as well. And I couldn't do this video without bringing up like climate change and that sort of thing. I tried to keep it to a minimum, so I only got like 2-ish books on that, just because half my wall over there deals with it in one way, shape, or form or another. So anyways, first we got The Ethics of the Climate Crisis by Robin Attfield, and this was a fantastic little book. I think I took 5 pages of notes, I want to say. Yeah, holy cow, I think I took like 5 or 6 pages of notes just on this little book. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. It deals with the science quite rigorously. But kind of get you thinking. There was a few different facets of the climate crisis I didn't always even like really consider as part of it. I didn't realize, for example, how air pollution, how significant that really is in certain nations and certain parts of the world, and how much problem it actually like cause between obviously like mortalities and deaths and sicknesses and that sort of thing, but also just like the cost that it has on like different nations and stuff. But yeah, you get into kind of a lot of the philosophical and ethical mindsets as well. Just for example, there's some like thought experiments for when the sea levels keep rising, there are a bunch of Pacific island nations and island nations around the world. Theoretically, eventually they will at some point lose all their territory. Like the islands will cease to exist because they will be underwater. And then it kind of deals with the problem of, to be like actually equitable. What does that actually mean to be equitable to like a sovereign people and a sovereign nation after they lose all their territory, mostly due to the rest of the world, because a lot of these, populations of these islands are fairly small and that sort of thing. So it's not necessarily really their fault that the islands go underwater. But yeah, if you lose all your sovereign territory, what even like happens to those people? Does that mean like another country has to like cede territory to them? Do they just become effective like refugees and like ad infinitum? That sort of stuff. You definitely deal a lot with like monetary stuff as well, like climate refugees that I just mentioned. And it kind of shows that a lot of these problems are just going to keep magnifying, but they also like kind of work in tandem with each other to kind of create this like really just like messy spiral that's almost like never going to end. But yeah, it kind of makes you thinking. Like I said, there's a lot of there's a big chapter on like kind of the ethics of a lot of different things. And one of the ones that I've been like thinking about since reading the book is, do future people and populations, do they have any rights in this day and age, and do we have any obligations to future people and that sort of stuff? There are a lot of big opinions, and kind of discuss a few of them and that sort of thing. But yeah, just kind of really hard hitting, and just this is definitely the best one dealing kind of with the philosophical and ethical implications of the climate change rather than just the facts per se. And obviously, I think most people like, that write books on nature or the environment or anything like that always just kind of say, it's bad, and morally bad. And it, it is, but they never really obviously kind of go into like the deeper meaning of like why it is so and all that kind of stuff. But really enjoyed that one. And then lastly, it's going to definitely be a reread that I'm going to do to inaugurate my Gloom and Doom book here. And it's The Story of More, How We Got to Climate Change and Where to Go From Here by Hope Jahren. You might recognize the name from Lab Girl, which is a super famous book as well, probably more famous than this one. Definitely highly recommended. This is just this one is a like science memoir of her history, working up to get her PhD in the sciences and stuff, and all the different laboratories that she's run and obstacles and barriers she's had in doing that. This one is all about just overconsumption that people have done over the last like 100 years or so in all kinds of facets. Obviously climate change, like kind of global heating, is talked about overconsumption of water resources, overconsumption of just different goods leading to plastic pollution, industrial farming, how it's causing, soil erosion, deforestation, all that kind of stuff. So pretty much everything like that, but it's written so, what's the term? Not just plainly per se, but very like salt of the earth. Like you can't read it and like argue with it, if that makes any sense. Like I don't see how, this is the one I do recommend to people, like if they're actually open-minded, because I live in a pretty rural area that not everyone believes in, like, that the weather's changing, even though we had, this year in Maine, we had almost no snow on the ground in February, which has literally never, ever, ever happened, in anyone's lifetime, ever. But anyways, this is definitely the book I kind of recommend to them, because it's pretty straightforward. It's not that long. I think it's only about 200 pages, and it's not like super dense like text or anything. But her figures are just super well done. Like I said, just writes like, doesn't talk down to people and everything like that. And then at the end, if I remember, there is like a section that's basically something you could almost, sources and suggested reading that you could just, write down all the facts and figures from and everything like that. But yeah, just super well done. Like I think there's a couple other things like on overconsumption of like marine resources, all that stuff. Energy consumption as well. So yeah, just pretty much anything humans are screwing up with as far as overdoing it, it's in here. But just really well thought out, really like just lays the groundwork for thinking about all these issues. Really highly recommend that one for sure. There you have it. I feel like I talked a long time about like 6 books there. But let me know down below if you've read any books on contemporary like kind of problems or issues, especially kind of in like that journalism style. Granted, Story More definitely is not in that journalism style, but I think all five. Oh no, I guess the ethics of the climate crisis wasn't like the other style, not journalism either. But the first four definitely were. So if you got any books on like contemporary issues and that sort of thing, leave a comment down below. And I'm always, like I said, I'm always on the lookout for different recommendations. And this is definitely like something I don't have like tons of recommendations on, because it's something kind of pretty new to me. I've only been reading stuff like this year, so, but I've been really enjoying it. I feel like it definitely kind of broadens your mind. It makes you think after you read it, and I feel like that's like one of the best things about these kinds of books, is dwelling on it and kind of contemplating like what you read in like those moments when you're not actually reading or doing something else, and kind of just pops up into your head and that sort of thing. But anyways, whether you're reading a book on a contemporary issue or not, always remember, read victoriously.